or count two, excuse me. Is it true, Mr. Huff, that on about the 17th day of March, 2025, in the city of Syracuse in Onondaga County, you find this funny?
No, it's a joke stuck in my head. Go on. I'm listening.
Are you able to pay attention?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to start over again. Is it true that on about the 17th day of March, 2025, in the city of Syracuse in Onondaga County, you intentionally caused the death of Yeraldith Tschudy? That being, you shot Mr. Tschudy in the head at a close range with a 12-gauge shotgun. Is that true?
Sure, yes.
Is it yes?
Sure.
Well, I need an affirmative. Yes, that's what happened.
Yes, that's what happened.
All right.
A man walked into a Syracuse courtroom, sat down in front of a judge, and laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a broken man trying to hold it together. He laughed. And then he pleaded guilty to murdering his 11-year-old son. I need you to sit with that for a second, because we are going to go through this whole story together. And by the end of it, you are going to have so many questions that nobody has good answers to. His name is David Huff. He is 43 years old. And on a St. Patrick's Day that nobody on Roney Road in Syracuse, New York will ever forget, he picked up a 12-gauge shotgun and used it on the two people who should have been the safest around him: his girlfriend and his own child. Let me tell you something. This case is not just about what he did that night. It is about what he did in that courtroom over a year later, when the whole world was watching. Because that told us everything we needed to know about who David Huff really is. So let us go back to the beginning. In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear. Yeraldith Tschudy was 32 years old, and if you ask the people who loved her, they will tell you she was the kind of woman who showed up for people, even people who had nothing to give her back. She was a social worker. That was not just a job title for her. That was who she was. She devoted her life to helping others navigate some of the hardest seasons a person can face, and she did it with compassion that people still talk about. She was also a mother of two. One of those children was Jeremiah. Jeremiah Huff was 11 years old, curious, joyful, the kind of kid who found wonder in small things. He loved collecting rocks, unique ones, the kind most people would just walk past without a second glance. But Jeremiah saw something worth keeping in them. He was that kind of child. Now, David Huff was Jeremiah's father. He and Yeraldith were in a relationship, and from the outside, this looked like a family unit: a woman, her children, and the man she was with. But moving on, because we need to talk about what was happening underneath all of that. Anyways, what we know is that on the night of March 17th, 2025, St. Patrick's Day, something went deeply and violently wrong inside that home on Roney Road, and nobody inside that house was going to walk away from it the same. Now here is the thing about St. Patrick's Day. It is one of those nights where the whole city feels like it is in a different mood. People are out. People are celebrating. Nobody is thinking about anything heavy. But inside that house on Roney Road, the mood was something else entirely. We do not have every detail of what led up to that moment. What we do know is that David Huff was not in a good headspace that night. Prosecutors would later tell the court that he was high on illegal drugs when it all went down. His own defense team did not even argue against that. They said it themselves. Like, that is not a defense. That is just context. Because plenty of people have had bad nights and bad decisions, and none of them picked up a shotgun and turned it on their family. So whatever was going on in that house, whatever words were said, whatever tension had been building, it ended in the worst way imaginable. David Huff went and got a 12-gauge shotgun, and he used it. Yeraldith Tschudy was shot and killed inside that home. She was 32 years old, a mother, a social worker, someone's daughter, someone's everything. And then Huff turned that same gun on his own son. Jeremiah was 11 years old. 11. And his father shot him multiple times inside that house. The prosecutors later confirmed in court that one of those shots was fired at close range, directly to Jeremiah's head. Period. I am not going to soften that. You need to understand exactly what happened in that house that night, because the details matter. The details are what make this real. But here is the part that will stay with you long after this video is over. After he was shot, after all of that, Jeremiah still had enough life left in him to reach for his phone, and he called his mother. She picked up, and she had to sit on the other end of that line and listen to her son, her 11-year-old boy, take his final breaths. There was nothing she could do. She was not there. She could not get to him in time. All she could do was stay on the phone. Make it make sense, because I cannot. That little boy held on long enough to call for his mama, and that is the kind of detail that does not leave you. That is the kind of thing that reminds you who the real victims are in a story like this. Not the man who will spend the rest of his life in prison, but the people who never got the chance to choose any of this. Yeraldith did not choose this. Jeremiah did not choose this. And that mother, who picked up that phone call, she did not choose this either. Now, after the shooting, David Huff did not turn himself in. He did not call for help. He did not check on his son. He ran. And where did he go? He went to Upstate Community Hospital. Not as a patient, not because he was hurt. He just walked in and stayed there. For nearly an hour, David Huff hid inside a hospital, a place built for saving lives, while two people he had just shot were back on Roney Road. A staff member eventually noticed him and asked him to leave. Just like that, he walked out. Oh, so now he is just casually strolling out of a hospital after committing 2 murders. Okay. Meanwhile, state and local police were out in full force. They searched through the entire night looking for this man. It was not a quick operation. This went on for hours, with officers combing through the city's south side trying to track him down. And then a neighbor called 911. That tip is what cracked it open. A regular person, picking up the phone, making the call. That is what led police directly to Huff. Body camera footage from a New York State police officer captured the moment he was taken into custody on West Seneca Turnpike. He did not resist. He was calm, cool. The same man who had just taken 2 lives and spent an hour hiding in a hospital walked up and let himself be arrested like it was nothing. That calm? That is going to matter later, because it showed up again, in a completely different room, in front of a completely different audience, and it was worse. More than a year passed between that night on Roney Road and the day David Huff stood before a judge to answer for what he did. A whole year. For Jeremiah's mother, for Yeraldith's family, for everyone who loved those 2 people. A year of waiting, of court dates, of having to hold all of that grief while the legal process moved at its own pace. And then the day finally came. David Huff walked into that Syracuse courtroom to enter his guilty plea. 2 counts of murder. 2 life sentences waiting for him on the other side of it. His family was there. Yeraldith's family was there. Jeremiah's family was there. The room was full of people whose lives had been permanently changed by what this man did. And David Huff? He sat there, and he laughed. Not once. Not a quick involuntary reaction. He smiled. He smirked. He shook his head. And when Judge Ted Limpert looked at him and said, "You find this funny?" Huff's response was that it was just a joke stuck in his head. "I said what I said." A joke. In a courtroom, while pleading guilty to murdering your child. The judge had to stop the entire proceeding just to check whether Huff was even paying attention. And even then, when it came time to actually confirm what he had done, Huff pushed back on the details. When the judge read from the indictment that he had shot his 11-year-old son multiple times, including once in the head at close range with a 12-gauge shotgun, Huff said he was not shot in the head by any means, but that he was still pleading guilty. The judge told him clearly, "That is not how this works. You have to confirm what is in the indictment. If you are saying that is not what happened, then they needed to stop and come back." And Huff's response? He said they were not coming back, and that whatever they said he was guilty of, he was guilty of. Like, make it make sense. Because this man was simultaneously denying the specific details of what he did to his son, while also pleading guilty to doing it. In the same breath, in front of that child's family. His other son, who was in that courtroom watching all of this unfold, had finally had enough. He shouted at his father directly, "Embarrassing yourself. Just speak." And David Huff looked back at him and said, "I love you." Girl, I do not even have words for that moment. The audacity, the absolute disconnect from the weight of what was happening in that room. Prosecutor Rob Moran addressed Huff's behavior directly after the proceeding. He said he could not care less what Huff's reaction to any of it was. He acknowledged that if you have that memory in your head, the memory of what you did to your 11-year-old boy, it would be hard to admit publicly. But he made it clear that his focus was entirely on the victims' families. He said they had begun to turn the page, and that they were finally sending Huff where he belongs for the rest of his life. That is a prosecutor who understood the assignment. Now, Huff's legal team did confirm that he had undergone a full psychiatric evaluation. The result? He was found competent to stand trial. He understood his actions. Any impairment he had at the time of the murders was determined to be the result of voluntary drug use, which means it did not qualify him for an insanity defense. He knew what he was doing. He chose to do it, and he chose to do it high. Anyways, sentencing was scheduled for the end of May. At least 20 years per count, with 2 counts of murder. That means David Huff will spend the rest of his natural life inside a prison cell. And when that sentencing day came, the families of Yeraldith Tschudy and Jeremiah Huff were given the opportunity to stand in that courtroom and speak, to finally say out loud, in front of the man who did this, exactly what his actions cost them. Nobody can give those families back what was taken from them, but that moment, that chance to speak, was theirs. Yeraldith Tschudy spent her life showing up for people in their hardest moments. She was a social worker. She was a mother. She was someone who chose every single day to give her energy to others, and she deserved to grow old doing exactly that. Jeremiah Huff was 11 years old and collecting rocks and calling his mama, and had a whole life ahead of him that he never got to live. Those are the 2 people this story is really about. Not the man who laughed in court, not the sentencing, not the legal proceedings. Those things matter, but Yeraldith and Jeremiah are the reason we are here. Moving on. Because we owe it to them to remember who they were, not just how they were lost. If this story hit you the way it hit me, share it. Talk about it. Because stories like this one, they do not just happen out of nowhere. And the more we talk about it, the harder it becomes for people to look away. Rest easy, Jeremiah. Rest easy, Yeraldith. This has been Dark Whispers.